Hi guys, welcome back to the tech. Oh, that was a bit, wasn't it? I didn't mean to. I'm fine, by the way. I'm not grumpy or tired. Actually, I'm always tired, but I didn't go because of any bad reasons. Just, I don't know why. I'm so dehydrated though. Excuse me. So this is my second channel. This is called The Tech Diary, and I just take forever to get to the point and waffle on about stuff, and some people love it, some people don't love it. If you don't love it, see you later. You might prefer, in fact, you won't like me now, will you? So you won't watch it. But just in case we haven't completely fallen out, the Mark Ellis Reviews channel possibly will be for you because I get to the point much quicker there. Anyway, today, he says, trying to get to the point very quickly, I want to talk about the iPhone. Not the iPhone 16e specifically, because it doesn't matter, but this is still my phone, by the way. I'm absolutely using this as my main phone. But the iPhone generally, and I want to talk about two things that I remember from the good old days that are making me feel a bit sad about what might happen next week. So to put some context around this, I'm shooting this on the 4th of June. Next week, we have WWDC on the way, which I'm excited about, but for the wrong reasons, really, just from a purely content perspective and, you know, a cinematic perspective in terms of what could happen. Nothing to do with in fact, this brings me on to my point, which is I remember two things specifically with the iPhone. The first one was in 2010, whatever you want to call it. Remember that? 15 years ago, when Apple introduced the first Retina screen iPhone, which was the iPhone 4, or was it the 4S, or it was one of those. But in 2010, we got the first Retina display iPhone, and I remember specifically how much of a geek I am and how much of an Apple fan I genuinely am. I remember specifically being at work in my old job, and my colleague came in, and he had the iPhone 4. I'm sure it was the 4, but he'd bought one basically, and he walked in with it like, check me out, guys. Guess what I've got? Got it out of his pocket and showed me the phone. And in fact, before he showed me, he said, "You will not believe this screen. The display on this phone is unbelievable." He said, I remember him saying, "It's just like when you go into a phone shop." This is how old I am. And back then, they'd put they wouldn't have the phones on. They'd have like a kind of a printout of the display stuck to the phone, so you could get an idea of what the operating system would look like. But obviously, because it was printed out, it looked very clear and very sharp. He said it actually looks like those stuck on displays, but it's not. It's the proper real display. And he got it out of his pocket and he showed me it, and it was like, I remember clearly, because obviously up until then we'd had low resolution displays on everything pretty much, from TVs to games consoles and definitely phones. So it was just, I think I had a 3GS at the time, which obviously had a very low resolution display, and this iPhone 4 kind of waltzed into the building, and it was just stunning. And then obviously since then every phone has a very high, is it the pixel density? Whatever it is that creates, it is, isn't it? Whatever it is that creates that Retina display thing, every phone's got that, and most laptops have got it, and displays and all the rest of it. But back then it was a big deal, and it was exciting. It was when the iPhone launches were exciting. That's the first thing I remember very clearly. The second thing was the launch of iOS 7, which I think was in 2013. So 3 years after that Retina amazing moment, we got iOS 7, which was the first operating system. If you remember this far back, I had to remind myself this morning of when it was. But it was the first operating system, the first iOS that had been redesigned by the then head of design, Johnny Ive. So Johnny Ive was obviously he'd been working on the hardware side of things for many years. But Apple put him in charge of software at that point, and the first project he had was to completely redesign and give a new visual look to iOS, and that's what iOS 7 was. Now, you might, if you remember this, please get involved in the comments, because I genuinely remember sitting there watching it at home. I kind of sat down on my sofa with my laptop, and I had the Apple website open, watching WWDC back then, and this is how sad I am. I remember the first few frames of the reveal of iOS 7 kind of coming onto the screen, and this is sad, isn't it? I hope my girlfriend doesn't watch this. I hope none of my family watch this, because most of my family aren't that bothered about tech, really. If they realise that this is what I do for a living, I'd be cast out and quite rightly put out to pasture, I think. Totally off topic. That happens quite a lot on this channel as well. I do tend to meander off it into little cul-de-sacs. But yeah, I remember that. And I remember iOS 7 being really exciting. It was very divisive. You know, a lot of people hated this design that Johnny Ive had come up with. And looking back, it was very much style over substance. They did have to roll back a few of the things that they changed. But largely, we've still got a lot of the iOS 7 design elements in iOS today, in iOS 18. But I remember the excitement around it and how different it was. And that was the main part of that WWDC, that great big, was it WWDC? Whatever it was the main part of that event, as was the Retina display for the iPhone 4. It was big, it was exciting, it was new, I can't remember the last time that happened with any Apple product. I genuinely can't. I mean, I suppose the only thing that comes close is Vision Pro, but Vision Pro has lots of problems, and it's also very unobtainable for most people, to be honest, and pointless for most people. But aside from that, I can't think of anything else that is that exciting. Which brings me to WWDC next week, and I think last week on this channel I talked about my predictions or my wishes for each of the operating systems next week. But today, the reason I'm talking about this is because We've heard on the grapevine, and it's all rumours, it's not confirmed obviously, but we've heard on the grapevine that there's going to be quite a significant redesign for a lot of the operating systems, but mainly iOS. iOS is going to get a big refresh, and from the sounds of it, it's going to follow some of the design elements of Vision OS, the Vision Pro operating system. So this kind of glass-like design and more translucency and all that sort of stuff. So it genuinely sounds like it's going to be quite a big visual overhaul. Whether it will be as big a change as iOS 7 was from iOS 6, I don't know. I'm not convinced that's going to be the case, but it's clearly going to be quite a big change. The problem we have, and the reason for the title of this video, is that isn't the issue with, even if this big design change isn't popular, that isn't the problem. The problem is the Apple Intelligence stuff, and it's AI. It's this resolute focus on AI that all of the tech industry has, and the absolute mess that Apple has got into with Apple Intelligence. And you can look at that in two ways. One way that there's nothing wrong, they've delayed it and they've been honest about it, etc. And when I say delayed it, I mean they've delayed the improved Siri functionality and all the clever stuff we saw last year, 12 months ago. They've delayed it and they've been honest about it. Fine. The other way of looking at it is that it's just a mess. It's embarrassing. And if we lean towards that way of thinking, that is what is going to dominate WWDC. So any design refresh, if they come out and say, look, here's iOS. The other thing is they're going to change, apparently, again, rumours, but apparently they're going to change the numbering, the version numbering to the year. So rather than this be iOS 19, it's going to be iOS 26 for 2026. Whatever, that's just marketing and numbers, isn't it? But marketing and numbers. But regardless, that renumbering, renaming thing, and this potential big redesign, big visual overhaul of iOS will be seen this time around as a distraction. If they don't say anything about, anything additional about Apple Intelligence, if they don't recognise the fact, or don't publicly during the WWDC keynote make any reference to the delay or anything like that, by then suddenly going, look, we've got a new version of iOS, check this out. It's going to be like, squirrel, that kind of thing. It's a complete diversion tactic, or that's what people will see it as. To compound matters, they've also don't know if you saw this news, but if you're aware of who John Gruber is a very long-standing commentator and journalist in this industry. He's been around decades, and he's pretty tight with Apple, as they say. And every year, I think since 2017 or 18 or something, he has had a live talk show at the location where WWDC is being held. He did it last year, did it the year before, and quite often he's had Apple execs on the show. I think he's had them on every time, actually. He's had people like Craig Federighi and loads of them. But has Tim Cook been on it? I don't think Tim's been on it. But he's had most of the big Apple guys and girls on there. This year, they've turned him down. He's still doing it. He's still, I think, going to WWDC as a journalist, and he's been invited to that. But they've turned down his request for an Apple exec to be on his show, his live show, which I think is really poor form. I mean, why? This year of all years, why have you turned that down? And it's a relatively simple interview. If you've watched the previous interviews that John Gruber has done with Apple execs, he doesn't really take a hard line of questioning, to be completely honest. He asks a few spiky questions, but nothing major. So it's quite an easy interview. But for some reason this year, they don't want to do it. It's not a good look. And it kind of adds to this whole kind of diversion tactics. Quick, let's talk about something else. And that's a shame. And the reason that's a shame is because I would love it. I think I'd pay money just to watch WWDC next week and have it completely about a redesign of iOS. That would be enough for me. I don't really care about the rest of the operating systems. As I said last week on the video on this channel last week, I struggle to think of what else they can do to things like macOS and watchOS and even iOS as well. It's just, they're great operating systems. I don't know what more they can do. So if they can do if they're just going to do some pretty stuff instead, fine. I'd love to sit through an hour of that because there'd be no AI. I'm so bored of that stuff. I'm bored of Apple Intelligence. I'm bored of the drama surrounding it. It's incredibly dull. And I just think back to that Retina display coming out for the first time in 2010. I remember the iOS 7 launch, which was, very kind of controversial and split opinion down the middle, but it was interesting and it was, have those days gone? That's my worry. I do wonder if those days have completely gone. Because we've got so lost in this AI thing, which I'm not the only one who's bored of it, by the way. As you may or may not know, I do lots of travel. I go to events across the world, launch events for phones and things. And I won't mention names, but a lot of the people that I travel with, who are journalists and fellow YouTubers and what have you, we all kind of have this same opinion that AI has just got completely out of control from a consumer perspective. Not so much that everything else going on with AI, but with AI in consumer products, it's just monumentally boring now. And I would love a WWDC next week, which is just, here's a fancy new, shiny new design for iOS. It won't be that, or maybe it will be. Maybe that is what Apple's going to do. Maybe. Oh dear. That felt like a bit of a rant. Not sure what it was really. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And if you've liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, we've launched a new channel, which is exciting. It's completely about cars. So if you're not into cars, then don't bother. But if you're into cars, or you're just curious, or you're looking to buy a new car at some point this year, go and check it out. It's called The Next Drive. I'm on it. Someone else is on it. A guy called Alistair, who's a brilliant automotive journalist. We're kind of double teaming this. The first video is my review of the brand new Tesla Model Y, which definitely divides opinion. And yeah, go and check it out. We'll put a link down. In fact, no, we'll link to that video, the Tesla Model Y video, at the end of this video, so you can go and check it out. And if you like that channel, you know what to do. Anyway, guys, take care, and I'll catch you next week after WWDC, which is going to be very, very interesting.